Today we talk about Francis Drake, a Eurogame that is a meaty Eurogame, but not a heavy one, at least design-wise, because as a physical object this box is quite heavy. This box is full of nice goodies. In Francis Drake, the players play the role of late 16th century Francis Drake fanboys. They want to emulate the daring adventures of the famous explorer and corsair, and so they want to equip their ships, go around the Atlantic Ocean and attack Spanish things, Spanish interests, in the form of their forts, their galleons, their villages, stealing stuff from them, disrupting their economy, etc, etc, etc. What's not to love about that, right? So, Francis Drake, a Eurogame, as I said, there is quite a bit to it, but not to the point that the game feels too heavy, too complicated. In any case, it will take me a while to cover at least most of the basic ideas to give you a sense of how the game plays and flows. So, without further ado, let's talk about Francis Drake and how Francis Drake plays. Here you see the board of the game. It is a beautiful mounted board, and this area actually is the main board. Then there's also a secondary board here, which is used to store components representing resources that players will acquire, and each player also has a personal board that is used to organize the resources that players have acquired and are planning to use. Now, the game is divided in 3 missions. In each mission, 2 things will happen. In each mission, there are 2 phases. First, the players will acquire resources that they need for their trip by acting in that area of the board. Once they are ready to sail, they will then move their ships in this other area, and they will start doing stuff in this area. They may be doing some trading, and also, most likely, in most cases, they will be disrupting Spanish activities in the New World by attacking Spanish galleons and by attacking Spanish forts and villages. As I said, each of the 3 missions is divided in 2 phases. The first phase is the acquisition phase, where you collect resources that you will need during your trip. And in that phase, you use that area of the board. Players will act in the order indicated there. At the beginning, you decide a random order of the players. Each player has a color. In this case, green goes first, and yellow, blue, and red. And when it is your turn during the acquisition phase, you place one of these discs. Each player has a pool of such discs on one of the available spaces on that track, and you gain the corresponding advantage. So if I place a disc there, in the space there are 2 black cubes, I gain 2 black cubes that I add to my personal board, and black cubes in the game represent guns. In most cases it is pretty simple. You put your disc on a resource and you gain the corresponding resource. Now the next player maybe also wants guns, but by placing the disc there, the player will only get 1 gun. Or maybe the next player decides to go there and get 2 purple discs, and those are valuable goods that can be traded for more valuable goods on the other side of the ocean. What is interesting, well, 2 interesting things. One is that you have to think of this area as a one-way street. You see that arrow there? You can place your cubes only moving in this direction, then up here, and in this direction, then finally there, and then finally you place your last cube there, and you're ready to sail, and you put then your ship there. So if you place a cube on that or a disc on that tile, then you won't be able to place discs on tiles behind that disc. You have to move ahead. So there's a really interesting trade-off here between you will want to take your time to place as many cubes, as many discs as possible, but the opponents may jump ahead and get valuable locations, occupy valuable slots, and therefore gain a lot of stuff. So there are several decisions there based on what the opponents are doing, on the pace that the opponents are using as they move along that track. Also, that interesting thing about this track is that, I don't know if you can tell, the track is made of tiles, of mobile tiles, and between each mission you can shuffle them and place them in a different order. There are also tiles printed on the board. There's also a standard track printed on the board for beginners, but it's really more fun if you shuffle the tiles and you create a new track each mission. That adds a lot of variety to the game, that prevents players from getting too attached to a single strategy. Really fun stuff. Now, as for the resources, There you have the tavern when you roll to see how many crews you get. Crews are represented by gray cubes. There's also the possibility of getting an extra token, the ghost ship. We'll talk about this later. The ghost ship simply, when you place mission discs on the board, I will explain what those are, allows you to place an extra one. It doesn't really do anything. You remove it from the board once the placement is completed, but at least it tricks the opponent, and the opponent don't know exactly where your valuable mission discs are. I know it sounds all crazy because we haven't talked about mission discs, but we'll get there. That icon there gives you guns, black cubes, trade goods, as we explained. The informant, only one player can place their token there, their disc there, and the informant gives you several advantages based on information, on intelligence. For example, you may be able to look at some discs that the opponent have placed, you gain knowledge what the Spanish are doing, things like that. The Admiral is a card that I like very much. The Admiral allows you to place some of these tokens on the board. Now, when you will sail and you will go on missions, one of the things that you can do is to attack the Spanish galleons. So there should be a jewel there, a Spanish galleons, and each Spanish galleon has a frigate that accompanies it. Each frigate may have 0, 1, or 2 guns behind it. If you have the Admiral advantage, you decide where the tokens go, so not only do you know where they are, but also you can plan, like, oh, I think I want to assault that galleon, so I'm gonna put a frigate with not many guns there, because of course the fewer guns are there, the better it is. When you attack the galleons, I'm getting a little bit of hand here. When you attack a galleons, you reveal the galleon, and you count the total guns produced by the galleon and by the frigate, and you have to match that number with the guns that you're bringing from home. So having the Admiral is really important because it gives an advantage in assaulting galleons, and also you see that symbol there, that yellow symbol. Players, when they go on the map, they'll be trying to take control of jewels, gold, and silver. And silver, there should be a silver here, and silver. At the end of the mission, the silver that has not been collected by the players is scored as victory points by the player that has the Admiral. The Admiral doesn't get the gold, but gets a victory point for each such gold token that was not acquired. That is crew. You simply gain gray cubes that count as cubes. The Queen gives you a galleon and also gives you a gun and a trade good. And that having galleons is important. Galleon is a bigger version of your starting ship, and you need a galleon if you want to be able to assault Spanish galleons. You can do other stuff without a galleon, but it's harder. There's less stuff to do. Supplies are represented by these barrels that seem to come straight out of Donkey Kong, the board game. Supplies are very important because you need those to sail. No supplies at all, no traveling, which is dramatic, tragic in this game. Francis Drake, you need to place 2 discs there to gain the benefit, but it gives you then 3 gray cubes and 3 black cubes. The Governor, similarly to what happened with the Admiral, if you're the Governor, you get to place some of these tokens on the board. And these tokens represent garrisons of Spanish forts or Spanish villages or Spanish important stuff. So if you have the Governor and you get to place them, you know exactly what number is printed on the back. And the number can be between 2 and 0. There's also 1, of course. Just as the Admiral, knowing how many soldiers are in a certain area gives you advantages when you're planning to attack that area. And also the Governor has a silver symbol on the card, which means that you score a point for each silver that hasn't been acquired by any player. Golden Hind, you get an extra disc, an extra mission disc, which is this one. The camera is getting confused. Another focus. Oh, here we go. Let's see if this is better. You get that extra disc there that you can use when you're placing mission discs. We'll talk about those later. More guns, more supplies. This card here gives you a token that allows you to ignore enemy guns when you are assaulting a fort. Basically, it represents the small ships that you can use to land, sort of like D-Day in 1569. You can do a D-Day operation, so you land behind the fort of the enemy, and you do not have to worry about the guns of the opponent, the guns of the Spanish fort. The Spanish are not represented by specific opponents. They are sort of like the AI, the enemy, ingrained in the board. Shipyard gives you a bigger galleon. Then we have more crew. Then we have the Investor. The Investor is a powerful card, but to use it costs 4 victory points, and also you can do it only once per game. So to represent that, each player starts with an Investor token, and to use the Investor effect, you have to spend the token that you start with. Finally, you can place a disc there, and that's your last chance of getting a supply or a gun or a crew. And then, depending on after you're done placing discs on the track, you place your ship on this track here. First player that is done buying stuff places in number 1, then number 2, and then number 3. So that's the order is important. Again, maybe sometimes you'll want to skip ahead and maybe get something a little less so you get a good position there. Once everybody has their ships on that area, it is time to get ready for the mission proper, to use the stuff that you purchased. Each player has a standard set of 4 mission discs with numbers from 1 to 4. You may have the ghost ship that you acquire at the tavern that doesn't really do anything, but it's sort of like a dummy, so the opponents don't know where the good ones are. You may have the Golden Hind, which allows you another mission. Then, in the order indicated there, players alternate placing their discs in areas of interest to them. Suppose I want to go there, then I want to go there. Yes, there are those 1 and 2 numbers. For now, ignore them. It doesn't mean that only 2 players can go there. It means that only 2 players can successfully do something there. If you see 2 discs, so 2 circles there, it means that 2 players can do something successful there. But the other people can try, because if the people ahead of them fail, then they get a chance. But if 2 people manage to complete the objective of the area, of an area that has 2 circles before you, then your disc is wasted, and there's a lot of strategy around that. So players place their discs on the board. It is important, however, to note that where they can place them is dependent on the number of supplies that they have. With 1 supply, you can only reach location in the area 1 of the board. This is area 2, which you can reach with 2 supplies. Then that band there is area 3 and area 4. So you may want to mark with a cube the farthest area that you can reach based on the supplies that you have. Now finally, players reveal all of their discs, and then they start resolving them. First, the Golden Hind, if 1 is in play, then all the discs number 1 are resolved, then this number 2, and so on and so forth. When players have the same number on the discs, then you use player order there to break ties and decide who goes first. Here you will have tiles representing goods that can be traded in the location. For example, here we have coffee and sugar. If you have a disc there and you take an action, you can trade 1 of your goods, of a generic good cubes, with 1 of the goods there, and you place this on your player's board. I was able to successfully do the action there, then I marked it there. Then suppose the yellow player gets there and trades, gets this, and then the other players that have tokens there, that have this there, cannot do anything, so those discs are wasted. Other things that you can do, you can assault a galleon. We mentioned that early. When your disc is by a galleon, you reveal the number of guns that the galleon has, and you have to spend an equal number of guns from your own supply to match the number of guns that are present on the galleon. If you're able to do so, you gain the jewel associated with the galleon, and also galleons have a number of victory points. This galleon, for example, has 6 there. And you grab the jewel and you put it in your personal, look how how nice is this, in your personal treasure chest. Similarly, if you attack a fort, you reveal soldiers that they may be there, you add the printed number of soldiers there, there may be guns there, and you need to produce a number of crews, in this case I need 1, and guns to match the defenses of the Spanish. Same idea. If you succeed, you gain a gold, if the gold is there, and also you gain a number of victory points. In this case, you gain 4 victory points. You may also assault a village, and villages usually are not as well defended. For example, to defeat this village, all you need to do is to produce a single crew to beat that single soldier. Turn on the defenses, you score 2 points and you gain the gold. When you defeat a village or a galleon or a fort, you record your success here. Suppose I'm red player, just defeated a village, hooray, I record it there. And then a fort, alright, this turn, this mission wasn't able to defeat a galleon, maybe next time. At the end of each mission, you also score points based on the type of missions that you completed. I was able to complete 2 types of missions to disrupt the Spanish interest in 2 different areas, then I gained 4 points. If I did the trifecta, I would score 10 points from that. So players resolve all of their discs, trading, but mainly attacking the opponents and really fighting for position, because each location on the board has a limited number of available slots and a limited number of people that can perform actions in that area, which means that you may waste discs from time to time. Once players are done completing their missions, they return to the harbor, and again, the order in which they return is important because you start placing them 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth until all the slots are filled, and then you have the order for the next mission, or I should say for the beginning of the next mission when the players move on that area. Between missions, the board is almost entirely reset. The only thing that really does not reset is the trade goods that you may have acquired that stay in your possession. Other things like crews and guns you have to give up if you still have any, and you repeat like this. Then starting with the second mission, you shuffle the tiles on that track, move around, you reset the track, and you repeat. Move around that track to collect resources, go down here, grab stuff, return there, repeat that. You repeat that for 3 missions total. At the end, the player with the total score victory points is the winner of the game, and victory points are scored by completing missions on the board, as you saw there. At the end of the game, you also score points for the treasures, silver, gold, and jewels that you may have gained. Silver, usually you gained by taking control of some villages that have silver. Other things, as I said, the admiral, the governor effect may give you victory points. You gain victory points here depending on the type of things that you do. And also, very important, at the end, the set of goods that you have produced, that you have collected during the game, also may give you victory points. As you can see in that track there, if you have a single good, you score a victory point, you score 2 victory points at the end. If you have a set of 2 different goods, 8, 3 different goods, 16, and 4 different goods, brace yourself, a whopping 26 victory point. You total victory points from all the possible sources in the game, and at the point, the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. I like this game. I like this game a lot. I think that all of the elements are really well integrated, all the elements of the design. Everything is so relative to what everybody else is doing. Therefore, it feels pretty tight and even claustrophobic. There is a constant interaction, if implicit, if indirect. There isn't a direct way of attacking the opponent, but trust me, when you get your disc where the opponent displays their mission discs and you have figured out that that's a very important mission for them, and you place your special disc that allows you to complete your mission first and push them out of that area so they will not be able to accomplish what they have been planning to accomplish, that is a pretty intense, again, if technically indirect form of interaction. Everything is based on what everybody else is doing, because everywhere resources are limited. In every slot there's only a limited number of people that will be able to perform their actions. Getting to certain locations on the track where you collect resources is particularly important to get there before the people do that. So there is a race element, there is a occupying areas at the right time, at the right moment element, but in particular there's an element of reading the opponents, figuring out what the opponents are doing. At the beginning I almost had the sense that this was going to be a multiplayer solo, but I couldn't have been more wrong. Nothing is in a void, in a vacuum in this game. Everything is tightly connected to what everybody else is doing. I really like that sense of wholeness, of group effort that comes out of this. Of course, it's a group that is fighting against its own members, but it's still, you really have a sense of a collective experience. It's a very well integrated design, also in the way in which all of the parts are tied together. You think of each mission as two vastly different elements, different parts, almost two different mini games, occupying areas on the resource track and then spending those resources. But yet it feels that maybe because of the theme that this seems to be captured quite well for a Euro game, maybe just because of the idea that, again, rushing on one of the track, on that track, resource track, gives advantages on the other, in the second part of the mission when you're actually sailing around. Maybe because of all these elements, the two parts of each mission do not feel too separated. I didn't get the sense that it was like a clunky design. Oh, we did this, now we forget about it, it's completely different. Yes, the mechanics are different, yet the things that you do are different in two phases, but somehow it flows well. It smoothly goes from one element of the mission to the other. Maybe because actually the thing that they have in common is, again, this idea of limited resources, of claustrophobic fighting for very limited slots of opportunities, windows of opportunities that you have to do on both on the resource tracks and in the ocean area. Maybe because of that common mechanics, the common mentality, the two parts feel very well interconnected. The presentation of the game is outstanding. The components are excellent. Everything is produced very well, high quality. Everything looks good, and yet it remains functional. Setting up the game is a little bit of work, but if you are working with other players, then that's not bad. And the same thing for resetting the board between missions. It takes at least 3 players to play, so at least you have 6 hands going around and setting up and resetting things. So that is not a problem at all. The logistical aspects is not a problem. I would say the material, luxurious aspect of the game doesn't get in the way of playability. There are moments in which I look at these components and it almost it was bordering overproduction. Like, do we really need those treasure chests? And recently I played one of the most overproduced games in human history, which is Dark World, and I'll talk about that in another video. Or I talked about that at the end of the video, depending the order in which I release them. And that is overproduced, and it also has treasure chests. But then I look at it too and say, no, here we have a component which is nice, solid, but yet it's still functional, because hiding the jewels, the gold, the silver that you conquer from the opponent gives a little bit of doubt, a little bit of uncertainty. Things don't become too mathematical. People will have a lot of things to think about, and it will not be easy for them to keep track of what exactly it is that you collected in your treasure chest. You yourself may not remember it, most likely. So it works. It looks good. It looks like it may be slightly overproduced, but actually in reality it's functional, and it adds to the interest of the game, because it adds that extra element of uncertainty. Uncertainty about what everybody else is doing, which leaves room for a lot of bluffing. Uncertainty about what everybody is doing and where everybody is at exactly. All this uncertainty works very well in a design that otherwise has virtually no random elements. You roll a die when you go to the tavern to decide what you get there exactly, but other than that, there is virtually no other luck element. There may be a minor factor when you're placing down the soldiers or the frigates, but it's really, really minor. If you read what the opponents are doing, then the luck factor is secondary, and what the opponents are doing is functioning random in a sense, but if you actually are able to figure out what they're doing and you bluff well, it is not random for practical purposes. So very little randomness, a lot of interesting challenge though. I like this game a lot. It is fun. I think it has great replay value because of the variable setting up of the track, of the resource area. Fun. I have nothing to complain about this game. It's a beautiful game, a game that is beautiful just to have because of the material elements, the joy, the tactile components, the sensorial experience of playing this game is beautiful. The design aspect is great. I really enjoyed this game. I see that from time to time the publisher puts it on sale. Well, keep an eye out. If you see a copy out there, the game is not new, but if you see a copy out there, maybe that is on discount, consider grabbing one for yourself, because definitely this is a fun game and one that has a place, and a place of some honor in the collection of a board gamer.